Okay, here's another one of those tournament style problem solvings. So this one literally jumped up at me, as you can see, 11 seconds. It was just completely obvious. So if it doesn't jump out at you, I'm going to show you what it looks like when it jumps out at me. Bam. The decoys for the check, and the rest is pretty obvious, right? All right. I just wanted to show you one quickie like that, where it literally jumped out at me instead of taking his bishop back with the pawn. Now we're back in live time to see what is what. Good question. I mean, you know, we have the opportunity to take this and make this into a king and pawn endgame. But I'm pretty sure we need to check this guy on f4 first to drive him as far away from the pawn as possible. So now we're going to take this rook. He takes, and we're going to go here straight to get in front of our pawn, because this is a forced win. This opposition, when you have the opposition in front of the pawn, right here, this is a forced one game. So this is a magic position that you have to know. When you're in opposition, one square could theoretically be, he could be here, would be a win as well. So with this black king here, if he's on any of these white squares, either one, in front of the pawn, no matter where the pawn is, it's a win. Okay, that one was fairly easy. Well, let me think. So, the question is, I mean, right off, what jumps out at me is these two knights, and h6 and d6. This is what jumps out at me. Also, well, something that jumps out at me, actually after I look at it, so it's not maybe jumping out at me. Something that I observed would be, okay, now, I didn't mention this before, but in case there's any new guys here, we look at checks, we look at captures, we look at piece contact, and I'll explain in a second, and board situation. Okay, now, I'm going to go to piece contact on this one. You know, I mean, you can look at the checks. Queen takes, rook check, knight h6 check, knight e7 check, rook h8 check. Captures, a queen takes rook, knight takes d6, knight takes a7. And no, this is interesting. Some of you guys might look at this and go, man, why do you even mention knight takes a7? Because you know what? Oh, and also I forgot to mention queen takes b7. Now those are both obviously trash moves, but the habit of becoming aware of what you can do eventually will pay off. There are rule positions that would be exceptions to the rule where the stupidest looking move actually is the winning move. So it doesn't cost you anything to look at those moves. And you could choose not to look at those moves if you want, but you know, that's your business. I can't tell you how to run your business. But in piece contacts, a move that came to my mind that might be of value, maybe not, would be like rook to h7. So you could just play king takes rook, and we could play like queen takes rook check. And then he can't really interpose, but he can just go to the h8. I guess it's not very good. You know, the thing is, we are down an exchange. This board situation is we're down the exchange for the attack. So we have to cash the attack, or we're doomed, because look at his pawns. You know, he's got 3 pawns and a rook for a knight. That's really not a good deal for us. Except that it's winning, apparently. So, you know, we got to be careful. Even just winning an exchange is not good enough. We'd still be 3 pawns down. So realistically, we're not here to win material unless you can win a queen or a free rook. We're here to really checkmate this guy. And I don't see this as any other possibility. So this is going to be really a problem. I mean, one of the things I was thinking of, you know, is like knight captures, knight on b5 captures on d6. This knight over here on the far left. This one's far away from the queen, so if any of our pieces objectively just in a concept, the piece that's the furthest away from his king, if that's one that gets traded for another piece, okay. Everything else, we only have 3 guys in the vicinity of his king. He's got 3 guys in the vicinity of his king defensively. So we got to be very careful. But, you know, possibly knight B takes d6. You know, bishop captures. Then we'd have knight to h6 check, followed by queen takes f7. This is looking where it's getting somewhere potentially. So that the problem he has is that we play knight b d6. We're threatening queen takes f7 right off the bat. Now he could defend that with something like, you know, queen to g6. We just take that. I know, man, it's just real bizarre. We could just take that rook. He would play queen takes knight, and then what do we do? You know, that bishop would really, you know, having that bishop remain on the board after like queen to g6. I don't think taking the rook is the right idea. Because knight takes d6, queen to g6. We can't really take, we can't afford, objectively, we need him to trade the bishop for the knight. We don't want to really trade the knight for the rook, because you're not really getting much. You're down to just 3 pawns down, and he's still got 2 pieces defending. But we have 3 attackers. But the problem is that our other knight cannot attack his king well because his bishop is occupying the primary defensive post versus a knight, which is, you know, 2 squares in between bishop and knight. That's where each one of those defends against each other. So if the knight's attacking, the bishop has got it covered on all those dark squares. And if the bishop's attacking, the knight has got it covered on all those dark squares. So, man, it's really tough. It's tough to come up with some kind of, you know, magical checking move. Or is it, I don't know, check. But knight knight b takes d6 looks like the right move. You know, I just can't see what is going on potentially. But that dadgum bishop is so difficult to dislodge. Oh, knight d6. Queen g6 is losing to knight takes rook. Queen takes knight. Rook h8 check. Forces king g7. Rook h7 check. He takes it, then we take his queen. Therefore, cash. He had to take it. Now we're in business. What? Oh. Crud. I don't know, did I mention that? You know, do that check. Oh, yeah, knight takes bishop is wrong because he plays rook A, F8. Crud, my bad. I had this guy and let him off the hook. Wow. This guy is threatening to checkmate us. So right off the bat, if we stop checking this guy, we're mated. Just so you know. I mean, we can play knight d3, but that can't be the right move. Oh, look, we got this guy. Smoking. I realized that that was a ladder mate for the rooks. Did you catch that? I was looking at the knight dominating the escape square of f7 and g6 for. I'm like, oh, okay, you know, I'm just going to go bing, bang, boom. There's bing, bang, and boom. Sometimes it'll literally just jump out at you, and that was it. All right, the jumping move to me, rook f7 check. If you didn't see rook f7 check almost instantly, I don't know what to say. Now, I have no idea how good of a move that is. But nothing else even looks remotely decent, right? We have given up a piece for an attack. You know, rook f1 doesn't do anything because he's got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces guarding at this point f8. So he could put a piece, rook f8. He'd have 3 defenders and we have 3 attackers. We can't trade it. So rook f7 is by far the best move. And his best move reply is probably king to h8. Let's see what happens. Okay. Now, could someone explain to me how queen to f6 doesn't just blatantly win? How's he going to stop this? Queen to f6 threatens mate on g7. You know, queen to f8 stops that. And actually, it doesn't really stop it very well because I would just play queen takes g6 check, king to h8, and then checkmate him on h7. So that doesn't stop it. And queen to, oh, he's got rook check. Yeah, well, good luck with that. He's got a rook check. And I would just go king to the corner. All right, I'm sorry, I don't see it. I mean, I could go here as well. King h1. What can he do? King to h1 is, I mean, I'm mating him if he can't check me. So he can only check me on e1 or h2, right? His queen can't attack me. His bishop can't attack me. Only his rook can, well, his queen can go check me on g1. Good luck with that. So, again, you know, yeah, he might actually have, he's got business. Actually, he checkmates me if I go to f1. Look at that. King f1, double question mark, knight checkmate. Well, that's pretty obvious. I'll take the queen. You know, I could have played that all much faster, but we're in the business of tournament wins, okay? So I played it the tournament win style, and this was fast for tournament win style. You know, my philosophy was, look, the only move that looked decent, we've given up a piece for this attack. So, you know, you need to approach this from the logic position that I mentioned. I'm not here I can't fool around. The only move that's an attacking move was rook f7 check. Hopefully you guys agree with that. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess he couldn't go, you know, if he goes to h6, check here, and then mate. Okay, that's mate in 2. And I was thinking, you know, he goes here, but then, you know, I realized that queen f6 check and mate in 2. So g8 is the only move that doesn't get mated in 2, but I'm threatening now mate in 1. It is mate in 2, but without a check. So as soon as he runs out of checks, the second move would be mate. The second move of my attack. All my moves at this point are going to be responses to his whatever. This is a real clever move. You know, you only have 2 moves, h1 and f1. In f1, this is where you need to develop over time your danger awareness, which is I call the spidey senses. My spidey senses say that why is F1 and H1, one's better than the other. Now the gut reaction, spidey senses say king H1, which is the correct move. But I looked at F1 and then I realized knight to there, the bishop guards the rook after the knight checks. It's checkmate. So at that point it was easy, king H1. You know, and a real player is almost always going to resign in this position. He might spend 5 minutes or less or more. This is, you know, it depends on the person. But in these, I always say that in these problems at my, you know, high puzzle rating, I'm playing good players. And a good player is not going to play what this computer did. This computer is like, well, spite check, you lose. They might, but normally in a tournament, in an actual tournament, that they would look at this after, and then after a certain amount of time, they would go, you know, I resign, good game, okay? Because only a good player. See, here's the thing: when you're in this position and your move is black, a good player realizes, man, he got me. So, as a good player, a good player resigns in this position, which it's showing you that is a good player who can see that the sequence is absolutely winning, and it's an unstoppable checkmate. And so it's their own skill that allows them to see that, and they're like, okay, you know, well played. And then, you know, but then there's the jerk guy who plays these moves. I'm like, okay, whatever, I don't care. I'm here. I'm in the business of winning, okay? I don't really care, you know. I don't care about whatever, but I mean, if a guy resigns in this position, that tells me that this guy is a really good player, and only a really good player sees, you know, the whole thing that, oh yeah, okay. So it's one of those things like, I mean, you know, I've played players, and you know, where this kind of resignation has happened either by myself or somebody else, someone who's a really good player. You know it, I know it, they know it. You're like, dude, well played. That was, yeah, I missed that. You know, terrific job. I've played those players before, so in the higher rankings, you're going to see, you know, once you have established yourself, they're going to go, okay, whatever. So, pretty fantastic. So, let's look at this guy. 4 out of 5. Very good. I blew this one. I should have got this. Yes, I forgot my own beginning analysis was that I mentioned D6 and H6 being the squares. And yes, H6 was the killer square. So every once in a while you make a mistake and forget that I was trying to get this bishop off of this square. It's in the, I remember saying it. So, I mean, I feel like a dummy, okay? But, again, I say this before in my other videos. When you're seeing me make a mistake in these problems, these are tournament mistakes that are made. And when you see them, I'm explaining them to you as what they are. so that it will help you avoid them in the future. You cannot eliminate these kind of mistakes. You can reduce them, and that's what the point of this is. That I was trying to get this bishop off of this square to play knight to h6, because I realized back here, and I said it, that after I, that these squares, h6 and d6, look like, killer key squares, and they were. Now, also, in a tournament, there's a real feeling when you're in a tournament. It's a little more serious than what I'm doing here in these videos. So this is not an excuse, because there's no excuse. I'm in the business of kicking butt, and butt kicking is my business. So missing knight to h6 is my fault. And I'm not making an excuse for why I didn't play it. I'm just telling you the way it happened, that I didn't play it. And you have to take full responsibility for your moves, good or bad. I knew whatever. My mental laziness is the problem. I was mentally lazy and did not look through this properly. So that's why I'm trying to explain this to you. I want you to be able to learn from the mistake you saw me here in a semi-casual problem solving. I mean, I take full credit for the ones I get right, so I have to take full responsibility for the one that I missed, okay? And that's the difference. That's what separates the men from the boys. If you don't approach it with this kind of mentality, you will not succeed. You will be an inferior version of what you want to be. So this is how you win tournaments, is by cashing in like you're Kasparov or Carlsen or any great player that you appreciate their ability. You've got to cash like there's no tomorrow. And I needed to play. That was the point of getting the bishop off of that killer diagonal domination position of f8, was to play this move. Crud. So, I mean, I lulled myself to sleep mentally and paid the price by failing to solve the problem for the points. I pointed out the correct move, obviously, and then what's happening. But the point is, we're trying to avoid mistakes. So this is still a success, because this shows you that even strong tournament-winning players make mistakes, and they can pop up at the most inconvenient time, like this. So don't, the key is take your responsibility for your good and bad moves and learn from them. We're learning from this. I consider that a positive. In a tournament, most likely I would really look at this, because there's money on the line. And it's a slightly different feeling. I can't explain it. When you have a tournament prize on the line, trophy or money or whatever, you should be a little more serious than I was. But again, it's not an excuse. I failed, and I must admit my failure and strive not to fail again. That's all. As long as my philosophy is, as long as you learn from your mistake was valuable. And that's what separates the men from the boys. All of the really good players make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But the good players learn from the mistakes and become stronger as a result. So that's cool. So that's basically it. So tremendous problems. I mean, I thought they were all good problems. A couple of easy ones. This one was fairly easy. Bing, bang, boom. Right down, this is a standard H-file decoy into the corner for the king. Queen checks and mates. No biggie. Okay, that's pretty standard stuff. You have to study that. If it wasn't obvious to you, go back and study it and make it obvious. You need to have that become an obvious thing to be a good player. And like I said, this one, we were going to take advantage of the known winning position. So that was what I wanted to distract the king to the left side of the board, because this position is a win. Whether his king is on g8 or g6, it makes no difference. Whether the pawn is on b7, oh, not g, sorry. This is b1 or b3, and this is b7 or b6. The king's in opposition here with the pawn behind the king that's winning is a forced win. There's nothing he could do. This is a forced victory. So that's all. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If you guys know what to do, I'll talk to you later.